Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm joined by Ross Hollebon to discuss the seventh episode from Skeleton Crew titled, We're Going to Be in So Much Trouble. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it's time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Hey everybody, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations. Another knockout punch episode of Skeleton Crew. Perhaps the most tense one yet of the season. I mean, boy, I was just on the edge of my seat throughout all of it. And wow, I just can't wait to have this discussion here with Ross about this episode, diving deep into it, discussing theories, speculating on the future. It is the penultimate episode of Skeleton Crew, episode 7, titled We're Gonna Be in So Much Trouble. And wow, this is a great one. Before we get into that conversation, of course, Ross, longtime friend of the show, uh, writer for Fantatrax, Album Copic podcast, many other things across the internet. Just awesome guy, wonderful friend to the show. We can't wait to just have the chat with him here on the other side of the short break here. Before we get into that, let's do a quick roundabout of the news in the Star Wars Lucasfilm Adjacent Galaxy, which is frankly minimum. There is no real news to really discuss here. Again, coming out of the holiday season, work is starting to wrap up a bit. Just want to note, Star Wars Celebration is less than 100 days away in Japan. So if you're going to that, I'm super jealous and excited for you all to experience that. And I can't wait to do some CouchCon stuff here in the States with everybody. Some more information on that in the near future. Also, Skeleton Crew, the finale is next Tuesday. So just in a few days, we'll be finding out how the story wraps up, how it concludes, and seeing where the future of Star Wars goes. And then we have a break for a few months until Andor Season 2 in April. Which is wild to think that it's finally coming up. So anywho, that is all the news for this week. Maybe in the next couple of weeks here, especially after Skeleton Crew is out, we'll have a bit more on that front to chat about as things kind of start gearing up again after the holiday break and all that. So that is all the news for this week in the Cloud City Gossip segment. We'll be back on the other side of this short break with our conversation with Ross about Skeleton Crew Episode 7. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations, ladies and gentlemen. We are here to chat about the penultimate episode in Skeleton Crew, episode 7, titled, We're going to be in so much trouble. And I'd be in so much trouble if I didn't introduce our awesome guest here. So we have returning back to this show, Ross Hollebon. You know him from Fantatrax and the Album Cockpit podcast. Ross, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations. And how are you doing right now? We've got a lot to talk about here, and I can't wait to hear more about your Batu trip. But first, how are you doing, my friend?
I am great. We got maybe it's 3 more inches of snow today here in Indianapolis. So
Who's counting, though?
yeah, so it is. We've got our little Hoth Winterland outside
Oh, yes.
after 8 to 10 inches earlier in the week, and then adding 3 more today. So it's going to be a very low key time at home for a couple days, I believe.
Yeah, it's a good thing, NFL playoffs start this weekend. So, just shovel that snow, get it off of the driveway, and then stay inside, stay cozy, turn up the heat in the house, make sure those pipes don't burst.
Yeah, lots of blankets, lots of
Lots of
blankets.
blankets, indeed. Yes, yes. But forget the cold, because you were just down here in the Sunshine State recently celebrating 50. Happy
Yeah.
birthday, my friend! And you had a trip to Batu. So how was that? What was some of the highlights here?
It was awesome. It was, you know, just wanting to relax. And it was just Monica and I, after visiting my parents in Florida for Christmas and for a few days down there, and we just went and hung out. We no
Nice.
plans or anything. It was having our blue milk, probably with tequila in it, going to Oga's, just watching the excitement and feeling the
Hmm.
atmosphere of Disney. at Christmas time
Yeah.
is such a magic thing. And, you know, as you've been able to live, as Mary Purdue and
Hmm.
all the rest of the gang down there, and, you know, another benefit was we went to lunch that day with Mary
Nice.
and Chaz and I share a birthday on the 28th.
Oh, perfect.
So we kind of had a birthday brunch to begin with friends, but their their annual passes are blacked out during those times, so
That's
they
right.
didn't go to the park with us. But it made for like that extra bonus of, hey, I was with family for days. Now we're with
Hmm.
very close friends who are just wonderful people, um, and then just Monica and I kind of chilling in Batu.
Yeah, exploring the park and going to the edge of the galaxy, having that blue milk. We were talking off air, just the, people watching, enjoying the sights and the sounds of Batu, and seeing that face of kids, seeing like Star Wars in person for the first time, seeing a stormtrooper, seeing Kylo Ren walk around, seeing the Falcon,
Yeah,
and even parents too, right? Either seeing their kids see this joy for the first time in their life, or they're able to unlock the inner kid within themselves to be like, "Ooh, that's cool. It's the Millennium Falcon." Or, "Ooh, I can get my own lightsaber. This is a pretty neat experience."
yeah, and seeing them carrying their lightsaber cases around
Mhm.
after building them, and uh, turning around, like their head turning so fast as Chewbacca walks by.
Yeah.
And it's the magic that Star Wars is, and you know we'll get into it in the show here, but it's a lot of what I think Skeleton Crew is as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's exactly right. Now, you were unfortunately unable to get on Rise of the Resistance after being so close to getting there, and you actually did no, according to yourself, no ride. So no Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, no other rides at Hollywood Studios. Just kind of hung around and vibed in the awesomeness that is Batuu, which I think is just a wonderful cozy way to spend the holiday, and what a great way to celebrate 50, my friend. Like that's I couldn't think of a better way to do it myself.
Yeah. Again, it was, how can this be low stress and super fun?
Yeah.
And that's what it was. It was just sharing that time with Monica, and us being able to sit there and watch and enjoy and point things out, and just smile. Like that's
Yeah.
what it was. It was smiling and enjoying it in, and soaking in everything that the Imagineers have done to create
Yeah.
such an awesome place.
Well, unfortunately, you've done it like the rides before,
Yeah.
so you didn't have like your whole vacation wasn't banked on like if I don't do this, everything's ruined kind of mentality. So you had the adverse effect where you're like, man, I am the most relaxed, chill person I could ever be. Get me another blue milk. Let's do this.
Right.
Have you tried the green milk? Let's try, let's mix and match.
Yeah, and I haven't even gone there. I'm just like, I'm gonna. The blue has been good to me since the very first time, so that's always
Hmm.
what I've stayed with.
Really, you've never tried the green milk yet?
No.
Oh man, Ross, next time you're here, I think you're getting it. You gotta have it. You gotta
Yeah.
have it. You gotta be able to have an opinion on it. I know I probably prefer blue milk over the green milk myself, but it's not bad. It's not
Okay.
bad. It's not the travesty that some people make it out to be.
Well,
um,
and even the blue milk now is different than when I went shortly
Really
after the park opened.
interesting. Okay.
Um, so I felt like it was smoother. I felt like, I bet there has been,
Hmm.
the first time I went was Orlando 3 years ago, 4 years
Okay.
ago, uh, and it was, like, months after, a month after Rise of the Resistance had opened,
Hmm.
um, and from that time to then Star Wars Celebration Anaheim and experiencing Batuu West Coast,
Hmm.
and then back to here, like, it's almost like everything just gets optimized a little bit more each
Sure,
time.
sure, sure. Interesting. Okay. And I will, I don't know if you've had it at Oga's, but the Blue Bantha, which is the blue milk drink that they have there, is also different than what you would be able to get inside the park at the milk stand. So as you're probably familiar, it is kind of like a slushy kind of texture, but the
Yep.
Blue Bantha is like a straight. You're drinking a glass of milk, kind of like velvety, I guess, silky way of just straight down. um, yeah, completely different. So
Okay.
whole other experience to have too in the blue milk realm.
No,
Um,
they give so many great options
Yeah. Yeah.
and experiences and even changing up the menu a little bit at Oga's. So it's just
Sure.
like,
That
oh,
goes a long way. Yeah.
let's hear this time. Like we were able to walk out with the Loth Cat
Oh,
uh,
you got it.
tiki mug,
Nice.
as well as the kind of Endor, almost like geeky tiki style
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
mug.
Did
So
you take your coasters too?
I got Monica was a saint and just turned to our person and said, "Hey, can you? It's his 50th. Can we get a full set of them?" So
Nice.
he
For
brought,
the listeners at home, you can't see, but Ross is just holding up a whole like card deck of coasters from Oga's.
yeah. So that was he was just like, "Oh, absolutely," and just started laying them down on the table like he was a card dealer, and it was fantastic.
Nice, nice. Well, that's the way to do bat too. And you said you went to Oga, so what did you? What was your Oga's experience was pretty interesting, I will say, from what you shared with me off air. And also, what did you indulge in at Oga's?
There was definitely, I think Monica had a fuzzy tauntaun.
Okay.
I had a Bespin Fizz,
Mm-hmm.
and then we had the 2 drinks that came in those special glasses, and I
Okay.
can't
Sure. I don't know what they are
remember
either.
what each one is at this point, but that was a few drinks into the night, so that was,
You're feeling pretty good.
that's where it was. You know what? DJ Rex isn't the best DJ in the galaxy on accident.
That's so true. That's so true. And boy, a couple of drinks into the night too. That was you didn't even add that as the backdrop here, but you have the stormtrooper interaction too that happens when you're in Ogas as well. So I imagine that helped fuel the fire as well.
Yeah, well, that was actually when we first that was the first
Oh,
thing
even
when we
you
walked
got
into
there. Okay.
Batuu, and I was wearing my Fantha Track shirt
Hmm.
and walked right up and was just like, basically, "Hey, you look shady. What are you doing here?" And I was
Right.
just like, "Hey, just came here for a cup of calf." And the stormtrooper was fantastic. You came all the way to a remote outpost in the outer rim for a cup of calf. And I was like, "Yes, yes, I did."
It's
And
worth it.
and we kinda like I wanna say it was at least a 3-minute exchange where he
Hmm.
was
Hmm.
kinda giving me the business, and I was having fun right back, and then he turns to, Monica, who's taking pictures and video, and he's like, "Wait, well, what's she doing with that data pad?" And
Love it.
it was a great way to start our time there.
Yeah, dishing it right back. That's the way to do it. You're a true rebel.
Yeah, it was fun.
Not giving the stormtrooper any light of day. And did you happen to get a black calf cold brew while you were there too?
Did not do that because again, we went a
Ooh,
little bit later, so I was just like,
hey, it's always time for a black calf
I'm gonna
cold brew.
stay away from
Apparently,
the
according to my
caffeine."
Mrs. Forsco's conversations.
No, we stayed away from it. Uh, it was it was a little more alcohol than caffeine,
Hmm. Gotcha.
especially going on the night version of the journey.
Hey, that you had a wonderful trip. So that sounds like a blast. And hopefully next time you're down in the area, we'll be able to link up. So look forward to that adventure in the future as well.
That'll be great.
Anywho, we are here to chat about Skeleton Crew episode 7, titled We're Gonna Be in So Much Trouble. So for the folks at home, if you haven't watched episode 7 from Skeleton Crew, you kind of might want to pause this episode now and go watch it before uh, listening to the rest of this conversation, because frankly, you're going to be spoiled by everything that we chat about here. Everything is fair game after this point, folks, so you've been forewarned. But Ross, before we get into the episode itself, I want to talk about the the era of like anticipation coming into Skeleton Crew. This is generally a question I've been asking all of our guests here as we've been going through Skeleton Crew, because they really described this show as like this Amblin like adventure. And they've been doing that since it was basically announced at Anaheim Celebration in 2022. And that means so much to some people. It means nothing to other people. And I just found that it's a very interesting way for them to describe and market this show as such. So, well, first off, what was your level of anticipation weeks ago before Skeleton Crew even started? And frankly, what comes to your mind when you hear that phrase, quote unquote, Amblin like adventure?
Yeah, I think from the time Skeleton Crew was announced and as details started coming out, I was very intrigued.
Hmm.
Obviously, on the heels of the Acolyte, another one where we didn't really know what was coming, and I love surprises. I try
Yeah.
to avoid trailers. Um, I'll watch some here and there, but I don't want to break down every single thing.
Hmm.
I want to enjoy the journey,
Sure. Hey.
and what the artists have put together and the storytellers have put together for us.
Hmm.
Um, I want to trust them and watch it play out. And especially with Star Wars, but most things, I want to find the positive in it. And if
Right.
it's something that I don't love, I typically don't come out and say, "Oh, this is terrible, XYZ." It's kind of like, "Oh, okay, some other things do it for me better than this."
Hmm. Hmm.
And Skeleton Crew has not been that way. Skeleton Crew has been uh, just fun from the get go. And
Hmm.
I think it
Awesome.
is some of that Amblin like entertainment setup that was there.
Yeah.
This is a kid show that can turn serious. And I think,
And it did this episode, I'll tell you.
yeah, yeah. It, and I would much rather have that than have a serious show that tries to
Hmm.
force humor into it.
Yeah.
So I love the vibe of this. I love that we know that they're kids and no one is pretending that they're not kids. They're going to make kid mistakes. They're going to surprise us with things they say and do. But I mean, Amlin, like to me, and as a kid who grew up primarily in the
Yeah.
80s,
Yeah.
born in the 70s, but really grew up in the 80s, I was at the theater for Gremlins, Goonies, E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, Batteries Not Included, where it's Back to the Future, all of these where it's just like these moments of wonder that kind of
Yeah.
fed my creativity and my awe at what can happen out there. And hey, there's magic even in just day-to-day things.
Hmm.
So that's what I was expecting
Yeah.
based off of where this was coming from and how they were kind of marketing it from the beginning, and it has not disappointed in the least.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, you were that target age group for a lot of those classic Amblin adventure films. So, like, for you to say like this is in line with that, and then you get that same kind of in your gut feeling watching those as you did then. Like, I think that's exactly what they were aiming for.
Yeah, and they crushed it. Like it is with one to go still, I, I've I've had a smile on my face every single
Hmm.
episode, and
Hmm.
that's it should either be a smile or it should make you want to go read and learn something more.
Yeah.
So Andor is the read more for me, and hey, yeah, what more can I do to get involved here? This is the smile that has surprises worked into it, and they've done a great job with the storytelling
Yeah.
in my mind.
Yeah, nice. And did you? I assume, just knowing your history, many of those Amblin-like adventure films from the '80s. Did you see them at that classic Ocean City movie theater on your beach weeks back in the
Yeah,
day?
some of them were. I think the Raiders of the Lost Ark films were typically
I
during
definitely know
there.
Temple of Doom was the.
Yeah, well, and I know so at that same theater where I saw Return of the Jedi in Ocean City, I saw Temple of Doom, and during the day that day was the worst sunburn I've ever gotten in my
Man.
life, and that's when it washed off, and I stayed in the water all day. So like 3 quarters during the through the movie, like I started shivering because
Man.
I had like a just terrible burn, and then it goes into like one of the most embarrassing parts of my life is my mom and her two friends who are both nurses as well. We get back to the condo and they're filling the tub with ice and water to cool me down. So like, I'm not quite a teenager yet, but old enough. And I'm just like, oh, my mom and her two friends are stripping me down to put me in the tub. Like this is the worst thing ever, and I really hurt right now.
Yeah, yeah. Everything is just not even Indy could save me from this adventure.
Yeah, but that was during Temple of Doom, so I will always remember that in that theater.
Woof.
Lots of good memories. I will consider that a good memory, even if it was
In
traumatic in
hindsight,
certain ways.
it's a good memory. Yeah,
Um,
it's a good story, which therefore is a good memory.
yeah, so that's good. But I mean, any of those, seeing any of those on the big screen, especially as a kid, is incredible, and
Hmm.
I, they capture some of that uh,
Yeah.
through what they're doing with Skeleton Crew.
Agreed. Agreed. And I will say, you were like, they're not treating these kids like they're not kids. And I said, there's one moment where Jod, the wise elders, try to make them not kids, even though they're clearly still kids underneath that disguise that they quickly threw on.
Well, but then when he's up at the desk bribing the woman, and she turns around, she's like the wise elders, and they're all like kicking each other and
Yeah,
goofing
wise
around.
elders, huh?
Yeah, it's uh, that really made me smile.
Very wise, very wise, the most wisest of all of us. Well, about this episode now specifically, it starts with the parents of the quote unquote skeleton crew effectively getting a message out beyond the barrier. Are you glad to have this parent storyline included over the course of Skeleton Crew? So we've gotten like a few tidbits here over as the episodes have happened here.
Yeah, and I think that one makes me think back the most to Goonies.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and when the parents are meeting them on the beach, and Chunk's parents are bringing pizzas, and they're putting jackets around them, and everyone's kind of having their own breakdown of what just happened. That's how the parents are kind of infused here, of just,
Yeah.
hey, we're a part of this adventure whether we like it or not,
Yeah. True.
because we have to figure our way to connect with them, and playing by the rules isn't happening. Um,
Mm.
so I love I love seeing these people who are in important positions or adults saying, "Oh, we have to break the rules right now because we don't agree with what's going on," um, and they're doing it for the right purpose.
Hmm.
Um, but we don't know what kind of trouble they would have been in by the supervisor if if there weren't a new ship coming in to visit.
That's right. Things just happen that are fortuitous for them in some ways, but maybe not fortuitous based off of how the episode ends. I'm not really sure where they land on that front yet. They're not in trouble by the supervisor, but they may be in trouble by Jod by nature of association with the kids. So I don't know. Double-edged sword. Pun intended on that one. Um, I'm glad that they've included the parent stuff because I think like a lot of the early buildup for like 1 and 2 episodes of Skeleton Crew were very much like the kids live in this era of like everything's so strict and rigid. Um, like Wim's dad is like, I gotta get to work all the time. You need to like their responsibilities. Life is hard. You need to do your schooling and all that stuff. Like it's really drilled into them. Fern's mother too also has that kind of same mentality to some degree too, based off her stature and status on Atten. So it's nice to see them, like you said, kind of breaking the rules a little bit, and really having that like instead of the mantra of Atten is the best and we must abide by Atten's rules and the supervisor's rules versus like the individualistic of like, no, this is my kid out there. I need to protect them and find a way to get through the barrier, whatever I need to. They're kids out there. We can't let kids out in the galaxy by themselves that have no sense of what the galaxy is outside of Atten, right? They don't, as Wim's dad said in the message, he's like, you weren't meant to know all this yet until like you graduated. Like that was your basically your graduation gift was learning the knowledge of what it is. um, so they hadn't even had the doors open, I guess, with their hands being held at the same time. They were just thrust into it, and we obviously saw the episodes of Skeleton Crew that show them basically learning hand and foot what the galaxy really is like. Um, but again, it's just nice to see like the parents on a small scale level be like, "Hey, I care about my kids, and I don't care what the rules say. Rules be darned. If
Yeah.
you can't let me get a message out, like what are good of having the rules anyways? And clearly the supervisors and no, I mean, he's not in any hurry to help if
Yeah.
he was going to at all. In fact, he was probably, if I'm going down that storyline where the ship never appropriately appears at the right time, they're probably put in some type of prison on that Atten, or they meet the supervisor and then they're, who knows, a worse situation could happen to them based off
Yeah.
of, there is a scapegoat and a person to actively punish for things. They can't punish the kids until they return because no one's hunting them down from the planet itself. They're not sending out a crew to go find where these kids went off to. So if they silence them and no one knows that people got out, and the at and goes on as at and goes on.
Yeah,
um,
but we do get that moment of them being reunited and that
yeah.
excitement, even though there's some foreboding elements that you alluded to there. The parents aren't aware of that yet. They're
Oh,
just thrilled that the
they're
kids are
they're
there. The kids know what's going on.
they're the best. Yeah, they're absolutely like thrilled to see their kids again and in one piece. Um, and yeah, and I want to ask you, what did you think about like the kids? Eventually, the message gets captured by the pirates when the kids are captured, and they play the little clip there that they have, um, and the kids see it, and we get to see their faces on it and kind of see some of their reactions. So how do you think that that impacted the kids seeing their parents making all the efforts that they can in order to make sure that they're safe and taken care of?
I think it was eye-opening and just that positive reinforcement that kids need.
Hmm.
Um, kids that have 2 parents and that come from a loving family, like, they're very fortunate. Not everyone has that.
That's right.
So, I think they've been able to learn, and somewhat through Jod's story and what he shared with them, of how fortunate they are, and he doesn't hide that he's resentful to an extent and
Hmm.
calls them
Very much so.
spoiled,
Yeah.
and you have everything and your babies, 'cause, he's alluded to the fact that he didn't have that and doesn't have that.
Yeah.
So I think that's big, and each of them living in the back of their head, like, I'm sure I know I've done it. I'm going to assume you have, and other people listening as well, where you really did something wrong as a kid and you haven't been caught yet, but you're just like, "Oh, man, if they find out about this, I'm gonna get it."
Oh,
Um, and
man.
and that's what they're living, especially as they're coming back to At-Atten, is just like, I'm excited to get home, but I'm not excited about everything that may
Ooh.
encompass
Ooh, yes, I'm flashbacking to a moment right now. And the other one was
that.
worse, where it's like, "Oh, just wait till your dad gets home." And then,
Yeah,
like,
that
when one parent knows about it, but they wanna be united front about it, so then you're just living there knowing that they both know about it,
yeah.
and you're
They're
just
like,
like,
Go to your room, and I'll
"Yep,
let you know when dad gets home or mom gets home," whatever however it
yep,
plays out.
yep, we'll talk to you later." And they'll never tell you what later is, so you're just waiting for later to come, and you're just, oh, man, minutes are hours.
And that's when you learn to appreciate the cure.
Yeah.
When you're in your room brooding, waiting for the end of the world to arrive.
Whew. Ooh, yes, that's right. Put on your Stone Temple Pilots and learn learn the true meaning of life. I actually really appreciated that Wim's dad was like the last one shown in the video. Because I think it built up some tension. Because like I think they showed Wim's face watching it, and then like seeing all the other kids be like, "Oh, there's my parents. Oh, there's my parents. There's my parents. They all care about me." And I think kind of the big dynamic of this story overall has been like the Wim and his dad, Wendell, I think is his name.
Yeah.
Um, and he's like, I don't know if my dad really likes me. I guess is the question that's kind of percolating in his mind, because he's like, my dad is like, doesn't really have the time for me. He just kind of punishes me. He doesn't want to read me stories anymore. He's pushing me down a path. He's kind of grieving through me in some ways and not through me too, with their loss of their mother. So finally, like, then when he sees him, he's like, oh, there's dad. He does care about me. Oh,
Yeah.
this is nice.
Nice
I
resolve.
it's worth coming home.
Good call.
So that was kind of a big moment just for me being a fan of the character of Wim, to like hoping that there's some type of resolution to that story, or at least that conflict that they presented early on in this. And the main catalyst for why he pushed the button, I think, he's like, I don't want to go home. Screw this. If this button can take me elsewhere, I'll do it. And that's how they get out. So
Well, and I love even now as he's looking at it during this episode and saying, "I wish I'd never pushed this button,"
yeah,
that it is this big giant green button, and it screams, "Let's go."
yeah, yeah.
Um, and he did it. He took that chance, and he's going to be. Uh, I would expect when this is all said and done, he's going to be very happy that he pushed the button.
Mm-hmm.
But we still have at least 40 minutes, hopefully longer,
Yeah,
uh,
we got some resolution to
to
have
know
here.
what's going to happen.
So, Fern is like, "Oh, we're still going to be in trouble." Do you think they're going to be in trouble after all is said and done?
um, I think they will get educated.
What do you mean by educated?
I I think they will be it will be used as a teaching moment as opposed to I think they're past the point. I think they're going to be impressed. And again, it goes back to the Goonies when they're, even though the scene was cut out when Data's talking about the octopus.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Oh, the octopus. Oh yeah, and then the pirates, and then this and the pirate ship." And it becomes that moment of getting caught up in,
Mm.
"Oh wow, our kids just did have an adventure,
Yeah.
but we have them back." And
Narrowly
that
escaped, and
that's the important thing at the end of the day.
yeah, can't keep beating like a dead horse down. Like it's already happened, right? Like they left,
Yep.
they're back. So
And they
now
found their
they're
way back. Like, amazing.
you can punish them to the ultimate extent, but it's like at what point does it just matter? They're just kids. They push the button.
Yeah.
All kids would push a button.
I think they'll be good because I would expect that they still have victories that they are going to show and that we're going to experience.
No, fingers crossed. I sure hope so. But there's a person named Jod and Alwood kind of in their way, and I think in many ways this episode really showcased, like he showcased his true natured self. So at any point in the season prior to episode and including episode 7, did you expect Jod to be a force for good, so to speak?
I think what happens here, and I think it's just one of those classic Star Wars stories, or I mean, any storytelling, is everyone's got a gray area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a choice of every day we have opportunities to, hey, am I going to throw this in the trash can or am I going to throw it on the ground?
Yeah.
Am I going to let that person cross the crosswalk or am I going to blaze through it in my car and make them wait while it's raining
Mm-hmm.
out?
Mm-hmm.
I think he has shown times where he has some good in him, but I think he just keeps showing that he can't overcome that and
Okay.
overcome the
Yeah.
pirate side that he is. He's almost like a foil to Han Solo. Um,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
he's the scoundrel and the pirate that can't find his way to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me, you know, it made me think, um, with Brutus even. It made me think to Solo: A Star Wars Story,
Hmm.
and we'll get into that in a minute, but it is I don't know that he's redeemable. Um,
Hmm.
but again, they can uh, we have an episode left. We don't know
Sure
what's
do.
coming.
Sure do.
Um, and there were definitely times throughout the season where I was like, "Oh, he's coming around."
Mhm.
Um, but then as soon as the money comes back into play, if credits are on the table, you lose him,
He's an
and
opportunist, yeah.
he just took a credit bath, like literally.
Oh my
Like
gosh, he sure did.
he was Uncle Scrooge in that vault and loving every minute of it.
Yeah, yeah. I like what you said there about, like, him being an anti-Han in many ways, at least, like, his character, like, with Han, everyone's always expecting him to kind of do the bad thing, at various points, to be a scoundrel, and he surprises everybody by doing the right thing. Like, it's a part of him, he's the good guy, as Kira says. Like, he keeps doing the good thing even though on the exterior and some of his like suave actions may indicate otherwise. But the other flip side of the coin is for these kids, at least, everyone tells them don't trust him. He's a terrible person, and the kids are like, no, he's still got his job. We need him. He's part of our crew. They at least have this like projecting of good nature onto him that he just keeps being like, nope, I'll turn you kids in. we all shut up. I'm trying to think here. You kids, I'm going to overthrow you. We're not in this together anymore. We have no deal. Because there's a way that Jod didn't have to do all this. Like 2 episodes ago, um, Jod could have they could have found the coordinates. They went on to the Onyx Cinder, escaped whatever remnants of uh, Brutus's crew that was left over there that eventually trap him, and fly off to Atten. They're able to fly through the barrier. They land. He's applauded as this hero and savior of the kids and gets all this money and is heralded as such. But instead, he's going to live in infamy, at least on this planet and probably across the galaxy, for being the pirate that gets caught by a bunch of kids with all this money at his fingertips, like the discovery of Atten, only to be foiled with his greatest treasure right in front of his eyes that he can't have.
Well, and it's funny because he also, the only thing that he seems to adhere to is when SM33 discusses the pirate's code.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing that he kind of adheres to at this point.
That's his only moral guidance, and the pirate's code is such a loose a loose moral code of ethics that it is most helpful to you, and it could be your worst ally at times, I will say. Especially in this episode where we got a claimsies call back. Somehow that took precedent over pirate code and lore. But I think SM33 was kind of, I think the way it played out, I feel like it worked based off of how they described it. Like, you can't be captain of two ships. You're the captain of the ship that's engulfed the Onyx Cinder, but you can't be the captain of both. And he's like, no, I'm the captain of both. I declare it. So
Yeah.
I think that calling claims he's kind of worked in this situation because of that. And SM33 is like, there can't be as a droid, right? You can't have overlapping things. Like, if X equals Y, then Y cannot equal X and Y
Yeah.
to a droid. X equals X and Y equals Y, and there's no overlap.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Y equals this, N equals this, and that's all
exactly.
there is.
There is no multiplatitude of different variations to this thing. It's a very binary system, and it worked out for them. And then SM33, I'm glad, was able to be redeemed in some ways, and unfortunately, his redemption was his ultimate downfall. Yeah, the heck, we lose a head.
Well,
That
and
crushed me. I don't know how it did for you.
that little worm got evicted, and it wasn't happy about
Yeah,
it.
he was. Oh well, I tell you, I thought Jaw was gonna step on it.
Yeah, I did too.
I was like, you better not. That guy's become like another member of the crew here.
Yeah.
Did you expect this to happen? The full cutting of the head of SM33.
Nope. That it made once that motion started, it's like, oh, here comes the lightsaber, and it happened, but it was that it wasn't expected.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was just wild. I tell you, incredible. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what is happening here? And this was like the most tense episode of all of them.
Yeah.
I think just because
He's
we're like,
getting
where are we
closer to
going
the
with
money.
this? he's going to do the money.
Yeah.
He's got to find the money. And I used to work at a place where I was handling the money. Right, I was a salesperson. Not necessarily. I sold tickets. I sold tickets at an amusement park. That's what I did. Hershey Park. I worked.
Oh,
I sold
yeah.
tickets there. So,
My scar above at the tip of my nose here is from the ice rink at Hershey Park.
oh, that's the Hershey Arena.
Yeah.
Hershey Park Arena. That's where the vault is for money, and
Yeah.
the Bears still use it as a practice facility. Anywho, that is some Hershey lore for everybody here. And so let me just say, anytime you're dealing with money, that's where it brings out, I would argue, the worst in people. So, you're telling them it's $55 for a ticket. Do you have any coupons in there? No, I do not. I get paid $7.25 an hour in this little cubicle here. I don't have anything for you. And then you
Yeah.
really just see the worst in people, and they're trying to gouge you for everything they can, and you're just like, no, you chose to come here today. You didn't have to do this.
Right.
You are coming to see me, and so just Jod is just embodying the worst, that like when people are faced with like a choice of money or the goodwill of humanity, or just being a good person, frankly. He's choosing the money. He's like, I'm choosing the money. And I get that some of that can be from his upbringing, right? I lived on scraps. I was a scrappy kid. This is what happened for me to get to this point here. You kids were spoiled, etc. Like, man, that doesn't justify being a jerk at the end of the day. Let's
Yeah.
just say that. Like, we Star Wars has taught us that there are always avenues to be a force for good and to be a good person. And at almost every one of those uh avenues, Jod has said, I'm taking the other path here. So it's just funny when, like, every person, Kim, you name it, down the line, Pocket, you name it, Brutus, they're all like captains, whatever name he's using. Because again, he's used like 6 names in this show so
Don't
far.
trust him.
Don't trust him. And yeah, Captain Jack, Captain Silvo, Dash, or something like that. He's got all these names. How can you even trust a guy that doesn't even know who he is? He doesn't even want to present his himself to anybody. There's no trust built on any of that. If Han Solo was like, I am Solo Han, right? And then you find out later his name was Han Solo. You're like, okay, this guy's untrustworthy. But no, he's very straightforward about himself and his intentions and all that stuff. Look, I'm in it for the money. Like, okay, maybe you are. But then he has a changed, good-hearted nature. It comes out through all of that. Whereas John's like, yeah, I'm a part of your crew. Wink, wink. And just misleading these kids every step of the way. So, like, I'm, t- you know, there was a speculation a little bit of leading into this episode, I think, online, where they were like, we're gonna learn about Jod's backstory. And at this point, after seeing episode 7, I don't want to know. I don't want to know about this guy's backstory. I don't care. I don't care. I know enough about this guy through his actions, words, and deeds up to this point. Do you have any interest in learning more about where he came from or how he got to this point?
I don't think so at this point. Like, if there were, uh, I think they are setting up for such with Vane and where he is, and some of the pirates in some of the other areas.
Yeah.
I think it could make for a great comic book series somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't need it in the next episode, but I think there's an outside chance, and I'll talk about this as we're closing things up later. Um, I think we may get to learn a little bit more about him uh, as it closes.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'll let you speak on that a bit later here. I'll be intrigued to hear what you have to say on that one. Another theory that I saw kind of percolating online is that he never uses his quote unquote force abilities around the pirates, and they're like, why doesn't he do that? So do you have any thoughts about maybe why he is reluctant to you use the force here and there, to be like, all right, collecting this, grabbing this, using that? I don't know. I feel like if he's willing to, like, be so free about it among the kids, so I'm like, does he really have it? I don't know. I'm starting to question it now that someone's kind of brought that up.
No, I think it's really interesting. It's not something that I've even thought about.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and it may be, I think he's very insecure.
Mm.
So the fact that he
Yes,
isn't
exactly.
super strong in it, like, he can't show any weakness. So if he comes out and has like a
Mm.
fizzle, like, "Oh, yeah,
Mm.
I can do the Force," or I can control the Force and make things happen," I think they're going to expect much more from him than he can
Hmm.
do, and he never wants to look weak. So I think he
Yeah.
and it's also that surprise technique that he can use should he need it. So I think that's probably the most interesting part about him to this point is where has he picked up what he's learned,
Yeah.
and is that the highest limit his powers have ever been utilizing the Force?
Hmm. Very, very good assessment. That's exactly right, and I'm glad that you were able to put into words what I was just kind of thinking without even. Yeah, he is insecure. This is a guy that was brought up in a world of brute strength, and you can't show any emotion or anything that could be considered a sign of weakness, whether it be physical strength or unsure of self in many ways. There has to be this. unearned confidence in some ways, fake it till you make it of the pirate industry.
Right?
Until you can't make it, you discover, like in the first episode, there's you thought you came upon a gold mine of Republic credits, and turns out there's nothing in the vault. So, and then that's your weakness, was not being able to support your crew, and then they overthrow you. The mutiny of it all. Um, yeah, very good analysis there. It's almost like
Yeah.
you're a professor of sorts.
No, I try to pay attention to things. That's I I like to listen. I'll talk after I listen.
That's a good. Yes, we should all do that. That's a good mentality to have in life. And speaking of loss of life, the adverse of life, did you expect Jod to execute Brutus the way that he did in this show? First off, did you expect Brutus to be killed, and perhaps in the manner in which that he was in this episode?
I think it was a surprise when and how it happened.
Yeah.
I don't know that I wouldn't have expected him to get lost at the
Mm,
very least at some point. Uh, but what it did make me think, and I started to go into this a little bit earlier,
yeah.
it made me think of young Han versus Tobias Beckett
Mm,
on Savareen
mm,
when they both had their guns up.
yeah.
And Beckett afterward is like, you finally learned. Um, so when you're dealing with pirates, you can't play around, and Jod has learned that.
Yep.
And he's just like, you know what? This guy just almost had me out the airlock.
He's gonna do it again.
I'm not going to give him another chance to do
Yep.
that.
Yep.
So my only power play here is just to end him right now and take everything back by force.
Yep. No mutiny if there's not another captain to mutiny against.
Yeah, so that's that immediately, like, it was I remember in my head thinking like, "Oh, he just shot him." And I was like, "Oh, that makes me completely think about Solo."
Yeah.
And I'll throw in as we're doing that, hashtag make Solo 2
Make
happen.
Solo 2 happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanna see what that about that job on Tatooine.
Yes.
And Brutus was also never gonna learn to play the Valacord on Gleon Sun. I think that would have been a great story, seeing Brutus and Tobias Beckett hanging out, learning the Valacord.
Their band. Yeah, they were
Yeah, they
gonna
would
be
have
in the
had a
battle
nice
battle
band.
of the bands. Yeah.
Brutus, Tobias, and Nash. They were gonna have
Known as the Malacordians.
yeah, the Valkordians. They were gonna have a great time. And travel the galaxy with their retirement gig. But alas, they had others best them, and I was surprised, first and foremost, that Brutus was such a major character in this to begin with, based off of, like, I would have just naturally assumed that Vane was going to be the one that was going to be a leader of the pirates, especially since it was so heavily involved in the Mandalorian season 3. Just kind of made sense naturally that they would keep the character that was had major talking roles, that has maybe talked once or twice in this series. I would have maybe thought that perhaps Jaleel White's character would have had a bit more of a say, just because of the stature of that actor. Um, and turns out the one at least expected, that I thought would have just been a cool, like, background character, the Wolfman of of this crew, turned out to be the one with the most speaking lines of any of those pirate guys, and became the captain, and mutinied against Captain Silvo, and held his own for so long, and had him almost out of that airlock until the last second, when they finally came. The kids saved the day for him again. And Poor Brutus. Poor Brutus. A victim of circumstances. He didn't want to go to Atten. He was willing to let him go and
Yeah.
just pirate away. But no, he got dragged into this, and bested by Jod and Nawud, if
Yeah,
that
he
is
just
his real
he
name.
just wanted to uh, go back to where they started the episode, where they found them and just lord over everyone at the
Yeah, that
spaceport.
alcove, that spaceport. Well, they're
Yeah.
having fun. They're eating that, like, space crab ramen kind of thing out there, and just eating some noodles and drinking their drinks and going off on pillages and having a good old time. That doesn't
Yeah.
sound so
It
bad.
when that seafood stand shows up at Batu, I'm definitely coming back for
Yeah,
that.
that's your that's your I'm driving down. Can't miss it.
Or or the squid soup like Grogu had, like, getting
Yeah.
that as well.
Oh man, they have so many opportunities for expansion there when it comes to that menu. These menu items that are now introduced into Star Wars. I'm like, man, they keep doing it every year. Like with every new episode, there's a new opportunity. I'm like, come on, you guys have a gold mine down there. Just bring it in. People will
Yep.
show up. People will come.
Yeah.
Um, so everyone, pour one out for Brutus. Poor guy. You know, poor wolf man. Yeah, man, I thought once that happened, I was like, man, every expectation that I had for this episode goes out the window. Everything that I speculated on last week, forget about it. This episode is going to take us into places that I was not expecting, and then it eventually took us into places I wasn't expecting even further with the cutting off and the execution of SM-33, um, and the full on discovery of the vaults, the many vaults of at Atten. Right, it's finally nice to get some answers to what this planet actually is and what it isn't in some ways, and we still have some questions about it, but the rumors were kind of true about Ad and the stories and all that they were talking about in the show and throughout it. And Ad is a mint with vaults upon vaults full of credits, Republic credits, old Republic credits, it looks like too. What do you think the money is being used for currently, if at all? I mean, it may just be sitting in those vaults for no reason at all. They like call Republic emissary. I'm like, are they talking about an old Republic emissary? I don't think they're talking New Republic here.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotta be funding something because 'cause you're not minting money just to
For
have it.
nothing. Yeah, it's not just sitting there.
Um, and, like, I have other things that I'm thinking about that could still happen in this episode
Hmm.
or in this series based on this episode, but where the money's going, I don't know what that would be funding at this point.
The dark side of me is thinking, man, that first order is kind of lingering out there. Thrawn just came back. Someone's got to be funding this stuff. If that was maybe hidden, like I find it hard to believe that the Emperor, with all of his interests in the occult and looking up the Sith Eternal and Exegol and trying to prolong his own life, that he was not somewhat aware of the possibility of a mint of money being a thing that could happen across the galaxy. Um, I'd be so intrigued to wonder if like Project Necromancer isn't somehow tied into all of this. If they, since this is the Mandalorian time frame and universe, and that's a big talking point of particularly season 3 of Mandalorian. Um, and now that Thrawn's back in play because of the events of Ahsoka, you got to fund an empire somehow, and especially when it doesn't exist anymore.
But
Theoretically, it doesn't exist anymore, but it's the Republic is still a thing. But if they don't know and they're just kind of working down there, and they have this agreement with the supervisor,
yeah, I
who
mean, I
knows?
wonder if it could have anything to do and schedule-wise, I'm always curious if there are reasons that they release certain things at the same time. So the
Yeah.
Battle of Jakku
Yeah.
comic book series that's out right now, there are only 2 left, and I'm doing the reviews of that for Fantha Tracks right now. Um, and then how that leads directly into the Aftermath novels.
Yeah.
So maybe these are the finances behind all of that.
Whew. Could you imagine?
Yeah, it would I'm expecting, and probably more so when Filoni's movie comes out, I'm expecting my mind to be blown over a couple
I
things.
think so. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, Jabba the Hutt's son's coming back, so Stinky's coming back, so it's already blown away.
right? and and the star power coming with him
Yeah,
for that
yeah,
is
right.
unbelievable.
Multi Golden Globe and Emmy winning actor, right?
Yeah,
Future Bruce Springsteen, the
yeah.
boss.
No, I'm excited for that one. um, but yeah, I haven't put tons of thought into it, but it's been fun
Hmm.
talking about it here and hearing what you think and what you've heard about. Um, and what that could potentially be tying into
Yeah.
because, it takes money to do anything.
Yeah, exactly. let's just say it's not cheap to turn a whole planet into a star killer base,
Yeah.
so to speak. Literally, it is what it is. It's a star killer.
Yeah,
um,
that's more expensive than a Death Star, right?
that's right. It's not cheap to make these things. Someone's got to be funding it. And the Last Jedi kind of gets into it a little bit too, in terms of like who's funding what. Uh, uh, you know, and the whole Canto Bite sequence. They're like, hey, these guys are also making the TIE fighters and they're making the X-wings, and they're just kind of playing both sides. They're living in the middle and making money off of it. People are
Right.
profiteering on it, so people are paying for it too, and money talks. So it's who's got the most funding and resources, and that's just the nature of government and conflict across all of time and history. Who has the most resources and capital in order to fund their activities, and who can't. And eventually, if you can't, then you lose. Ask the Soviet Union how they're doing.
Yeah.
Um, so I was frankly just thrilled to see that there were vaults, and the fact that it lived up to, I think I would say, like the hype that I built up for it in my head, where it was like a room, an endless room of money. I know a lot of these criticisms of the Mandoverse shows are knowing that they're in the volume and filmed primarily in those spaces, that people will be like, I can tell the limitations of the space. It doesn't feel grandiose. And at least in this sequence, I didn't feel like I was watching people look at a screen that was maybe 5 feet away from them, and then was computer. They're looking at a green screen basically, and then they put a computer image on it, and they were just watching it. No, it felt like there was real depth to it. That
Yeah.
it was almost miles and miles and miles of sightline of endless rows of money. And that's just one vault. Another vault's down the road. Another vault's down here. They've got vaults and vaults and vaults and vaults and vaults of this cash just lined up. This, like, I don't know what the gold exchange rate is in the Star Wars galaxy, but I gotta imagine it's pretty high, considering how much these pirates are just like oogling and guying
Yeah.
over
The
over all this
the
money.
the planetoid piggy bank.
Yeah, yeah, basically. So
Yeah.
kudos to everybody for making this seem like the most realistic big mint bank in the planet. Um, and having worked beside the U.S. mints in Philadelphia, or at least one of them is. I don't know if we have many more these days. And then, of course, the Treasury Department was the Bureau of Engraving and Printing was right beside the Holocaust Museum in D.C. where I worked at. So
Yeah.
that was often a question that we got: where do they print the money at? Right down there.
It's
So,
literally right down there.
right, it's right there where they print it. You can take
Yeah.
the quick tour.
Right past that hot dog stand
That's
outside. Yeah.
that's right. Right there and to the right, you'll find a line. This is the thing that captures a lot of people's interests. So I'm glad they were able to live up to the justification of having it included in this, which I think was awesome. So kudos to the filmmakers for making this happen. All right. So ultimately, the kids are, like we talked about, they're reunited with their parents at the end of this episode. But the reunion is kind of bittersweet, as we alluded to. Jod ignites the lightsaber and approaches them. And that's kind of where the episode cuts to black. So, Ross, what do you think happens next?
Yeah, it's ominous. They're in trouble. Like,
It's not good.
that's the vibe as you close this of like, "Oh, look where this kid show's going right now."
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Um,
It's almost like Master Skywalker. There's too many of them. What are we going to do? And then that
right?
lightsaber ignites. I felt the exact same way.
Yeah, it is, it's tough there. I expect this to have a happy ending. Um, if I am just going completely out there on my own and throwing something out there, um, having not checked out what other people are saying, I think the supervisor shows up,
Hmm.
and I think the supervisor is Tack Renard.
I think that's a good. That's what I've been guessing this entire time too.
O Okay,
Is
so
that?
that's where, and it's almost like, this is too easy." Um, but that's where I'm allowing my head to take it right now,
Mm-hmm.
and he knows all about all the different names, and I think if he shows up, he could be the one saying, "I know all about you," and
Mm.
listing all of his names and saying, "We know how to take you out. We've been prepared for you for a long time. blah blah blah. Way to go, kids, parents, go enjoy.
Yeah, have some
Um,
PTO.
right? And obviously that would happen. It seems like that would happen too quickly. So
Hmm.
there must be something else involved, but that's as much thought as I've put into it. Again, I wanted to go on the journey that they set up and
Yeah.
say, okay, how are they going to play this out?
Right, right. And just for listeners, if you didn't catch this, the supervisor, we heard his voice a little bit in this episode, announcing that Republic emissary has come, not knowing that it is a band of pirates and the skeleton crew, um, that are then being taken down into the vault, etc. The supervisor's voice is Stephen Fry, who is a kind of well-known actor across the galaxy. Been in many things, and I am sure he's been lobbying for a Star Wars part for some time, after many roles he's had. I think the probably the biggest one I can think of that I know him from was his role in the Hobbit films, which I think he did a fantastic job as the mayor, I guess, of the city of Dale. Oh, I
Okay.
think that's
Yeah.
roughly the role he played. So yeah, good. Maybe we'll get a Stephen Fry actual in person role next week, as you surmise there. If I think the supervisor has to show up, there's too much illusion to it, and I think not showing Tack Rened in 2 episodes ago was a deliberate choice as well to create this grand reveal of, oh, that's. I think that's exactly what'll happen is, uh, the supervisor comes down to kind of meet the emissary, right? Um, and they're like, "It's the supervisor," and then John and Alwood's like, "It's Tack Rennet." They're all like, "Oh, you're that," and he's like, "I'm both." Guess what, guys?
Well, and it's fun because you're almost led to believe with the skeletons on the ship
That they're dead.
that
Yeah,
he may have been one of the ones that passed away,
yeah,
but then it's just like, oh no, I kept the ship hidden so that I could come and take over. You know,
yeah.
now
And he
he's the
killed the
Wizard of
crew.
Oz coming
Yeah,
in his hot air balloon.
right, right, exactly, same deal. Um, and he said in the story, SM-33 said he had to kill the crew because they knew too much about the location. So he's like Smog in a way, to create that kind of reference. Like he just wants to live amongst the gold. He like doesn't want to. We're printing it. I live it. I am happy in my solitude. I have the ultimate treasure. It's all under my control. I'm not gonna let anyone steal it. The heck you thinking? You coming in here, Jod and Nawwood? You're gonna be stepping on my pennies here? No, no, you're not coming in here and taking my gold.
Well, it
Um,
even ties to the riddle under the mud baths.
yeah, yeah, exactly,
It's just like,
exactly.
yeah, this is the most like nothing can be better in my life than having all of this.
That's right. That's
And
right.
I don't even need to spend it. Just having it means I won the game of pirate.
He did. Yep. I found the unfindable planet. I found the treasure, and I am the quote unquote leader of this planet. They follow my rules and instruction. I'm living pirate retirement. I'm living
Yeah.
out my days here. This is great. I don't care if anyone comes. Well, he does care if anyone comes, but he'll handle it, and
Well, and
he's
then
going to
if this
handle his fluff.
becomes that the Willy Wonka story, then maybe Wim becomes his next in line. He gets in the great glass elevator with him, and that's who Tack's gonna take on as his
Wow,
apprentice.
that would be wild if
Because
this
he
was
hasn't
really
taken
a
his
ruse.
assessment yet. He doesn't know what he's supposed to do.
This was really a ruse. He planted the onyx cinder there all those years ago as bait to see if anyone has the intuition or adventurous spirit in order to push the button to send it off into space and go on this adventure. And if you have the strength to return home, you have passed and proven yourself worthy of being my successor and being my apprentice and learning how to train in this internship.
And we have
I'm all
Cyclops
for that idea.
droids instead of Oompa Loompas.
That is I love it. I love it.
That's
I
where we're
love
going.
it, Ross. This is actually a secret Charlie and the Chocolate Factory story. And the golden ticket was the Onyx Cinder. I love it.
Yeah.
Wow. That is the gift. Man,
So
I
everyone expect everything but that to happen when we tune in on Tuesday night.
Ross, you're going to be getting a strongly worded message from me if this is not the the case, because I am loving this idea right now. This is perfect. I hope that skeleton crew has a nice cherry on top. That is that ending. That would be perfect. And they kick Jod out. He goes off and lives his pirate life, whatever he does. It's pathetic. He's a pathetic creature. He'll live his life scraping his way. If I assume they're not going to kill him here, so he'll find his way scraping along. Um, but yeah, Wim becomes the next in line to become the supervisor and maintain the gold, and who knows what happens to Wim. First Order rises up and Battle of Exegol and all that stuff. They need some cash for the resistance, and they dull it out a little bit. I'd be all for that. That sounds like a great way to keep this ship going.
Yeah, it's rolling.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love this idea. I hope John gets his comeuppance. I can't wait for next week. And fortunately, we only have a few more days to go, and then we're gonna be in this post era of like, wow, we have nothing again. It was so nice to have a Star Wars show for 8 weeks here, 7 weeks actually. Wow, and then we're gonna be off on a 3-month hiatus until Andor season 2. Wow,
It,
what a weird
and that
time.
is, I believe that to all be emotionally needed preparation time
I
for
think so.
Andor 2.
Probably. In hindsight, it'll be good. We all need a break from things. I think having that sometimes 2 episodes a week of stuff. Looking at you, Bad Batch season 2 and Mandalorian season 3. Um, the overlap there, and even with Willow among all that too, that was a lot. Especially if you're trying to cover it all, like we were. Um, it's weird when you have like the busiest time, and then you're like, oh, what do I do? What do I do with my Tuesday nights again? I don't have a Tuesday to look forward to every week. Um, yeah, I think it will be a healing time. We'll just rewatch Skeleton Crew to get ready and rewatch Andor season 1, right? I think someone said on the internet if you watch um starting next Tuesday, if you watch like the first episode or something like that, you'll be able to watch one a week to get to the start of Andor season 2.
Oof.
So get your Andor rewatches ready, everybody.
Yeah,
It's coming.
I'm so excited about that.
Come on, guys. One way out. One way out. Whew. All right, Ross. Anything else that you have to chat about in terms of episode 7 for Skeleton Crew?
No, I mean, I enjoyed this conversation so much. So thank you for going through every episode, Anthony, and what you're doing with Force Ghost Conversations, and obviously what Greg and Greg are doing with Rebel
Mm-hmm.
Base Guard, and uh, everyone who's out there doing things. The recaps on Fantha Tracks. Eh, it's fun, and I think especially with this show, to have the community a little bit energized and a little bit more positivity around this than maybe
Mm-hmm.
some other recent projects that
Yeah.
have been out there. So uh, it's important, and I think everyone needed this right now. So I think it happened at the right time. So thank you for what you're doing to elevate it even further.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and thank you for being a wonderful guest and for sharing your insights and theories, particularly that Wonka one. I'm gonna be I am ready for next Tuesday and hoping that every part of that comes true because I'm in love with that idea. But Ross, where can the folks find you online and the fun things that you're up to? As plug anything you want.
Yeah, Fantha Tracks. That is where there are 2 issues left of the 12-part maxi series of the Battle of Jakku. So I've been doing a review of each of those. Um, check out at Butler CCOM on Instagram and see what I'm doing with our students at Butler University, and empowering them to run some social media,
Nice,
doing podcasts there, 3 different ones for the university, which has kind of pulled back some of my personal podcasting as well. But it's been great to get that going, and especially when I can get students and guests involved as well,
wonderful.
and kind of teach them during the process, and learn from them. Really,
Yeah.
like every time I get to work with a student, I'm learning just as much. So it's super rewarding. and then especially when they find out I'm a big Star Wars fan, that some really great conversations get going.
Nice, nice. Well, that's awesome, and congrats on all that wonderful work that you're doing there, and you're being a wonderful teacher for these kids rather than John and Elwood. Like he's teaching the kids in the worst way about the world, and you're uplifting them and giving them opportunities and showing them the way of the light side of the force in many ways. So thank you for doing that and the hard work that you do on day in day out.
Yeah, thank you.
And folks, thank you for listening to this episode. And we'll be back next week, of course, with our final episode for now, I guess. I don't know. Maybe we get a season 2. Who knows? Of Skeleton Crew. So we'll be back with that. And guess what? We kind of alluded to our guest for next week. We got Mr. Greg McLaughlin from the Rebel Base Card coming on to chat all things from the finale, season finale, series finale, who knows, of Skeleton Crew. So if you want to follow the conversation with us again, you can find us on all the social media platforms, which right now include X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Thread. So just search for Force Ghost Conversations and you'll find us in those places. And until next week, we'll be back with a brand new episode on your podcast feeds. May the Force be with you. Take care.